Andrew Badger.
My name is Andrew Badger. I'm running for Utah's 1st Congressional District. I'm a 5th-generation Utahn of pioneer ancestry. Utah molded me into the man I am today. It's because of these values I later served our country in Afghanistan. I'm proud to earn the trust of our local community, reflected in the fact that we won the state convention with nearly 60% of the delegate vote. I'm running for U.S. Congress because I believe our country is in a state of crisis and that our current representatives are not acting like it. The question before us today isn't one necessarily of goals, but of means. Do we take the old GOP establishment approach, go along to get along, compromise at any cost? Or do we take the America First approach, where we boldly fight for the vision of our country, where we're willing to work together with others, but not at the expense of sacrificing our values? That is the question before you today. I believe we should take the America First approach. I look forward to introducing myself to you today, and I hope to earn your vote. If you want to learn more about my campaign, you can visit my website, badger2022.com. Thank you.
It's hard for one person in a body of 435 to have much influence. Are there coalitions that you would serve or organize to take a lead on key issues in Congress?
I think that the reason why we're in the state our country is right now is because the current Republicans have been compromising our values. They're not fighting for us. If we elect the same type of Republicans as Paul Ryan in 2018, 2017, that's what we're going to get, the same results. Nothing is going to happen. We have people like Mitt Romney, who say he trusts the president, who supports his infrastructure bill. Where are the results from that infrastructure bill? One of the reasons why I decided to run is because I found that our representatives aren't listening to us. They're not fighting for the things that are important to us. They're not fighting for things like ending the vaccine mandates, for empowering parents in education, and for securing our elections. These are the things that we need representatives fighting for. And I look forward to working together with a broad spectrum of colleagues back in Washington. But I would support the House Freedom Caucus. They're the most conservative bloc in Congress, and together we can have strength in numbers. Because again, if we get the Paul Ryan approach, we're going to have the Paul Ryan results, and that's what we have to avoid. I believe also that we have to be willing to work with the Democrats, but the compromise has been a one-way street for too long. It's time for them to start compromising with us, and that's what I think we should be fighting for.
The next question will go to you, Andrew. The question is, what is the most important issue specific to Congressional District 1?
I think one of the most specific congressional issues is our foreign policy and our national security. Because we have Hill Air Force Base in our community, we have our service members in our community who are potentially being deployed abroad and fighting in wars. And right now, Congress is not doing its job in providing that oversight for this Biden administration's reckless foreign policy. Under the Constitution, it's the Congress's job to declare war, not the president's. And what we're doing right now in Ukraine specifically is we're escalating this situation without any strategic goal, without any oversight of that goal. And we're just spent $40 billion, including from our Utah delegation, to send to Ukraine while we have troubles here at home. Well, people in the 1st District aren't able to afford gasoline. Well, they have trouble, worried about what their children are going to learn in school. Well, they don't have the confidence like they should in our elections. These are the issues that are important to the 1st District, and most importantly, is avoiding a war in Ukraine. And we have this, again, a reckless administration. We have no oversight by Congress. We spent $40 billion in this conflict while we have these issues at home. The highest responsibility, I believe, for any representative is the decision to go to war. When we send our young boys and our young women abroad to fight for a conflict, we cannot repeat the mistakes that we did over the last 20 years. I believe that's the highest responsibility. Having served in Afghanistan as a civilian intelligence officer where I supported our military, I think I have a unique experience in that qualification because I've actually seen war before. I want to make sure that we avoid it in the future.
We now go to a recorded question from Jason Williams with KVNU Radio in Logan.
With some parts of the district predicted to nearly double in population over the next few decades, rising challenges of air quality, open space, housing, the effects of climate change, and our water situation, it's safe to say the challenges ahead are going to become more complex and even more urgent to residents of the district. As a representative in Congress, what do you feel Congress can do to best help Utah and the 1st Congressional District rise to meet these challenges?
Andrew Badger.
It's really simple. We have to put the power back into our local government where we have officials who are held accountable by the local government, by the local citizens that they serve. Right now, we have vast government overreach, overextending its constitutional authority. I have a friend, Phil Lyman, serving in the State House here, and he tells stories about what the Bureau of Land Management is doing to terrorizing these communities down south, and just epitomizes the government overreach that we have in the state. I think there are 3 key issues we need to focus on. 1, housing. I'd be proud to support the Houses Act put forward by Senator Mike Lee, where we need to turn over these unlimited tract lands to developers to develop single-house homes that should be bought by American families. Second, in terms of water, we need to protect the States' Rights Water Protection Act, make sure that the president can't delegate these national reserves and include that water. We also need to pass the More PILT Act. We need to have these tax returns going to the actual local community like the federal government promised us. And finally, thirdly, we need to pass the Utah Lands State Sovereignty Act. Utah needs to have a say, and Congress needs to have a say when this administration or any president tries to designate national land, state land in our state. Utah land belongs to Utah's families. That's what we have to fight for. Finally, we have to ban communist China from buying our farmland. This is absolutely insane. China has already been at war with us for almost 20 years, and we're letting them buy our strategic assets. We have to build national resiliency, not just here in Utah, but across the country. That includes energy independence, that includes securing our food supply chain, and that includes making sure that we're not selling our strategic assets, especially in things like lithium, nickel, that are going to be used for batteries, to China, who's our adversary.
Thank you. Andrew, this question will go to Andrew Badger as well. Hill Air Force Base is the second largest base by population and geographical size. The base is also the single largest site employer in the state of Utah. With the economic impact of more than $3 billion annually, you all agree the importance of Hill Air Force Base. There are many things we could discuss about the base here today, but I want to focus on housing. Housing on Hill Air Force Base is not adequate for the demand and is in drastic need of updating. How would you specifically go about solving the housing problem for our service women and men?
Well, I think we need to reduce regulations and restrictions as much as possible. We need to open it up to more competition for our housing. I think one of the issues we have is there's a monopoly on the private housing. I've lived on a base in Germany while serving with the DIA, and a lot of times that housing was run down. It wasn't well kept because we're basically awarding these contracts to these entities that have no competition. So I think we need to streamline the process more. We need to have more private sector competition. Also, I think we need to put our Hill Air Force service members at the front of our minds. You know, I have a lot of friends serving in the Air Force who've reached out to me worried about the vaccine mandate, you know, and they're still being kicked out of the military because of this vaccine mandate, because our current representatives aren't standing up and aren't fighting for them. And I think we have to take into account housing. We also have to take into account that our service members have a right to medical freedom just as much as we do. And I think, again, thirdly, and not to forget, you know, our foreign policy also has to be prudent. We can't get in these forever wars abroad because our service members here in Utah are going to have to be deployed to fight them.
Under the Biden administration, Americans are grappling with fuel prices that are reaching near record levels almost daily. These high gas prices affect nearly every sector of the U.S. economy. What do you see as the cause of the high gas prices, and what can you do to help lower them?
I mean, the facts speak for themselves. Gasoline prices are soaring. American families are having a hard time paying for fuel at the pump. You know, this is one of the main reasons why we're having inflation. When fuel costs go up, food costs go up. This is a huge challenge. I think there are a couple things. Obviously, the Biden administration needs to open up these pipelines, not only the Keystone Pipeline, Dakota Pipeline. We need to get these leases back in order, start drilling again in the Anver region. And we need to make sure that we can actually become not just energy independent, but energy dominant. Another key thing is ESG scores, environmental social governance scores. This is how the capital banking industry is basically blackmailing the fossil fuel industry. I've spoken to a lot of people in the fossil fuel industry. They're telling me that they can't get the capital from these banks because their ESG score will get lowered, and thereby, you know, their drilling leases are going up. They don't have the capital for these infrastructure, for paying for their personnel. This is one of the main reasons why gas prices have gone up. This Biden administration is lying about this Putin price hike. That's surely one variable, but this is a multi-variable issue. And we need to fight back against ESG scores. We need to instill the responsibility within shareholders to have fiduciary responsibility in order to sue these companies if they abuse the ESG scores. We also need conservatives who aren't going to buy into this climate change narrative. A lot of Utahns, led by John Curtis and joined by Blake Moore, are part of the Conservative Climate Caucus. Blake, one of the first lobbying groups you met with was a climate change lobbyist group in Park City. And we buy into this narrative that this climate change hysteria, which is different from environmental stewardship, and we go along, we pass these 1.5 trillion omnibus bills, which are loaded with climate change, these Green New Deal bills, and we have to be willing to fight back, and we have to stop passing this crazy legislation and enabling the Biden administration to push forward this blackmailing of the American people.
Okay, we'll go to Blake Moore for rebuttal, and then we'll come back to Tina Cannon to answer the question.
Yeah, the actual strongest argument against Biden's war on oil and gas has been to be able to highlight the good work that we've been doing. And right here in Utah, we invested in Tier 3 gas. We spent billions of dollars to invest in Tier 3 refineries because that strengthens our argument. It makes it a more credible argument to support American energy independence. That the Utah delegations on that caucus actually is the largest Republican caucus in the entire group. And the reason in the conference, the reason is it's the strongest credible argument to go and support American energy independence.
Any other rebuttals on this particular issue? You've had one, just 1 second there.
I mean, you didn't answer the bill why you voted for a $1.5 trillion omnibus bill, which was loaded with Green New Deal pork.
What bill was that?
The omnibus bill last.
I didn't vote for the omnibus bill.
Yeah, you did.
I voted for the defense. There was 2 bills. I voted for the defense-related one, not the 1.5.
So you didn't vote for the 1.5 trillion.
I voted for the defense-related one.
Heritage Foundation disagrees. So
Heritage Foundation criticized. There was 2 separate bills. Every House member in Utah, the delegation voted for the defense-related one, but they still dinged it because they felt like when it went over to the Senate. So this is the legislative process. When it goes over to the Senate, it became one bill, but on the House side, we only voted for the security one. We did not vote for the additional appropriations bill. So it's a very clear definition. We communicated that to the Heritage Foundation. They thought once the bill was ended and through the Senate, if you voted on any of it, I support our military. I represent Hill Air Force Base. I have worked tirelessly and spent countless hours at Hill Air Force Base making sure that I'm there to support them. That's what I voted for.
And you also voted for that defense bill, which included funding the vaccine.
This is getting exciting. I like it. So one more rebuttal from Blake Moore, and then we'll come back to one more from Andrew Badger, and then we're going to move on.
Yeah, I understand.
Unless you want one more, Tina.
I've been in the thick of the process. On June 22nd, that's my birthday, everybody, I will spend I will be in committee for 18 hours in the Armed Services Committee room, going and fighting for the priorities that are most important to our national security and to Hill Air Force Base. Countless hours. That has been done for decades in this district, okay? So when the security bill comes up and the NDAA is on the table, that is something I support. The entire House delegation supported it that way. I did not vote for Democrats' appropriations bills. Thank you.
Andrew Badger.
I mean, you were saying all year you were going to vote for this infrastructure bill. At the last minute, you decided not to because you didn't get some assurances on the Build Back Better bill. That's an interview you've put forward. And I want to talk about the National Defense Authorization Act because we had conservative Republicans in the House Freedom Caucus who were not willing to fund that, vote for that NDAA until they removed the vaccine mandate from it and defunded it, like Mike Lee sought to do with the continuing resolution. We had our representatives who didn't support them in that cause. And so I would argue that you haven't been fighting for the Hill Air Force Base like you should have. Over the last 20 years, we've learned lessons the hard way. In Iraq, Afghanistan, we didn't have an exit strategy. We didn't have a definition of victory. And that's the same mistake we're making right now with the Ukrainian crisis. We all empathize with what the Ukrainian people are going through. We want to resolve the situation. But fundamentally, it's a political. It has to be resolved diplomatically. The challenge as well is it comes with costs and benefits. Right now, our representatives are sending $40 billion to Ukraine with no oversight, with no definition of victory. This administration has gone through mission creep. We went through defending the territorial integrity of Ukraine to now trying to weaken and defeat Russia. This is the recipe for a global war, and we have to start putting America first. We're shipping in baby formula from Europe while sending billions of dollars to Europe to fight this war, again, with no oversight, no definition of victory. Meanwhile, we have limited resources, and we have to focus on our #1 geostrategic threat, which is communist China. And a lot of this does come down to accountability. The Biden administration had the most disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. Having served there, it impacted me in particular. And having worked with a lot of Afghans who trusted us, we not only left Americans behind enemy lines, but not only abandoned our allies, we left behind billions of dollars worth of weapons and equipment. And no one's been held accountable. Blake, you passed a censure resolution against President Trump. Why not put a censure resolution against President Biden at the very least? So we can have some accountability. There has been no censure resolution, and he should be impeached for what happened in Afghanistan.
Blake Moore for rebuttal.
By far more. I was the first member to put an Afghanistan accountability that will address these items.
That's not a censure resolution.
So, again, every aspect of Biden's policies we've pushed back against. Strongly, credibly, so when we take the majority, we can control all this measures. We can control the process. We can control how we go about making these decisions. And to say that it's all that money is going to Ukraine, like I said, nearly half of it was replenishing our own military, right? This is, I did not invade Ukraine. This was not something that was expected. He saw weakness, and we're dealing with it the very best way we can.
Okay, the next question will go to Andrew Badger. What is your opinion on federally funded infrastructure projects? Are there projects in Utah you plan to fight on acquiring federal funding for?
I think one of the issues is when we have more federal funding, it creates more problems. We have less accountability. We are less effective in spending that money. And the problem is, again, we're going back to inflation. One of the main reasons why we have inflation is because we've been printing money we don't have. Congress needs to pass a balanced budget act. We also need to work with passing infrastructure bills when we actually have Republicans in office. I mean, President Trump put forward an infrastructure bill in 2018. We're actually focused on hard infrastructure, and Republicans shot it down because they said we didn't have enough money for it. So I think there are limited roles for federal Congress in supporting infrastructure. Obviously, one of them would be securing our border, finishing the wall. Other things we need to do is improving the efficiency of irrigation, dams, that type of thing, especially here in Utah. But first and foremost, this money should be spent at the local level where we have that oversight and where we can make sure it's spent most effectively and most efficiently. I mean, again, Mitt Romney said he trusted President Biden and supported this $1.5 trillion infrastructure bill. Blake also said that he was going to support it before he didn't vote for it at the very end. And where has this money gone to? You know, I would ask Mitt Romney, where is the benefit of this money that we spent, again, that we don't have? So again, in summary, while I think we do have limited areas for infrastructure spending, especially on irrigation, water infrastructure, especially on finishing the wall, we can't just write a blank check for Washington. It's causing inflation, and it has no oversight, and it's just leading to inefficiency.
Thank you. We're going to go now to 1-minute closing statements.
Our country is in a state of crisis, and our current representatives aren't acting like it. The question before us today is not necessarily one of goals. It's of means. Do we take the Mike Lee America First approach and defund this government if necessary to remove illegal things like the vaccine mandate? Or do we throw our hands in the air and say we're the minority government? There's nothing we can do. The question before you, the voter, is, are you satisfied with the direction of our country? Do you believe our current representatives are doing everything they can to fight for your freedoms? I believe that we don't have to settle for the status quo. Utah is a land of pioneers. We're entrepreneurs. We're ranchers. We're cowboys. And we're fighters. And now is the time to stand up and fight back to save our country. Not just for us, but for our children, so that we can hand them the gift of our nation better than the one that we were given. That is what we're fighting for. That is our aim. That is our goal. And that is what I ask for your support in. I believe freedom will win. I believe we can do this. God bless Utah. God bless the United States of America.